Welcome aboard, Kyler Staley from the Hoosier.com, Indiana Rivals, where you can get the latest in all news and recruiting information for your Indiana Hoosiers. Make sure you go to the Hoosier.com and subscribe. Keep local content going. Kyler, were you up? You didn't go up last night, were you? You guys
Nope.
up there? I know that Keegan and Mason or
Kevin.
it was Keegan and Kevin are up there.
Yep.
But this was a game that Michigan State needed. Forget about the emotion. I'm taking that out of this right now. This was a game Michigan State needed because they've been hovering at the bottom of not the standings, but hovering around the bottom of getting into the tournament. They've been flirting with that, starting to flirt with that line. This kind of puts them, they're in, I think. They would have to fall off the planet now to not be in. So great win for Michigan State. Not a debilitating loss for Indiana. It will knock them off. They surprised a lot of people by being in the top 16 seeds, first of all, having a top 4 seed. That's going to knock them off of this 4 line without question. They have the opportunity to get back there by beating Purdue, or they have 2 home games after that, which I think that if they lose to Purdue, they're going to be on a 2-game losing streak, and that'll kick them down. Then they win 2 straight. You don't recover. They're not going to recover the losses from the 2 wins. They will drop further than they regain. Like after the next 2, let's say they won those last 2 games, they will not be back up to 14th, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, this is probably your Indiana staring at the possibility of having a multi-game losing streak since the first time in early January. Just a rough week for them. They pretty much had everything going against them yesterday, with the emotions, the fact, like you mentioned, Michigan State was desperate for a win. And I think the win over Indiana got them firmly in the tournament. They would have to really struggle to the last few games to get out of the tournament at that point. But, I mean, one of the better first 10 or 11, minutes of play that Indiana has played this year, I thought, especially on the road.
On the road, yeah.
They were cool, calm, collected on the defensive end. They were disciplined. Their defense was traveling. And then, it felt like just someone took a needle and popped all the air out of a balloon. Michigan State started making shots.
His name was, I was going to say someone did, and his name was
Tyson Walker.
Mr.
Right?
Walker. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just started hitting shots. This was really the first time that I can remember in a long time that Indiana got punched and that they didn't throw a punch back. It was just, Indiana couldn't recover. That final 3 minutes of the first half was big. I mean, Indiana was down 6 going into the half. You thought that they would make some adjustments. They didn't. Michigan State pretty much controlled that whole second half. I think the closest Indiana got, the lead back down was like 8. But, I mean, it just never felt like Indiana was back in the game. The defensive end, I don't think they did they obviously didn't do a good job guarding their Michigan State's guards. Tyson Walker, AJ Holgard went off. I think it was like 23, 22 points for both of them. It's just one of those games where you really are starting to realize how desperate Indiana needs Xavier Johnson back, for these situations. I'm not saying that he was going to be a game changer on that game yesterday, but, as far as guard defense, perimeter defense, things like that, somebody that can slow Tyson Walker down.
Not just that, when Jalen Hood-Schifino, he had to exit the game with those 2 first half fouls, that puts Indiana at a huge disadvantage. Nothing against Trey Galloway, but he's not up there to where that offense can run that prolifically with him at point guard for much of a long stretch. And things started to go downhill. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying things went downhill mainly because Michigan State was just killing him on 3-point shooting. But
yeah, and then you also got to look at Tyson Walker. He did hit a few of those threes. I don't know how many threes he had, 5 or 6, something like that. He hit a few of those threes, late in the shot clock. So he made some tough shots. You got to give him to that. But yeah, like you mentioned, Jalen Hood-Schifino being on the bench really hurts Indiana. It takes away another offensive option for them because really, Trey Galloway's not that shot creator. He's not that playmaker. it limits Indiana's offense to what I mean. Indiana's offense is already limited to a lot of Jalen Hutchefino, Trace Jackson Davis. That's about it. Then you take Jalen Hutchefino, who goes on the bench and sits for an extended period of time. It's just Trace, and obviously Indiana couldn't get anything going. But I mean, just the loss there. I mean, the emotions were running high. Michigan State. I felt like going into this game, it was going to be really hard for Indiana to even win this game. I didn't expect Indiana to get beat by 15 points, but I mean, it's hard to win at Michigan State, especially under those circumstances.
Indiana has won there twice in the last 26 attempts, I believe now.
I think the last time they won was the Romeo Langford team at Michigan State.
They're just, like I said, they've won 2 times out of their last 26 tries there. Yep. So that's another, that would be the next deal that needs to be streak that needs to be gone away with, but that's for later. Indiana now has to look forward because they have yet their sternest test of the season now, as they will travel to West Lafayette to take on a Purdue team that they beat. So you've got a pissed off Purdue team because they're not going to want Indiana to come into Mackey and have any success whatsoever. And the fans are going to jump on Indiana 20 minutes before the game starts, and they're going to be on them 20 minutes after the game's over. So Indiana has to be ready mentally, period. I mean, maybe they should play with earplugs or something. I don't know, but they're going to have to be ready because this is going to be an onslaught. As far as noise and all of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Indiana, you mentioned it. Indiana's got to treat this like a rivalry game. They have to. Purdue treated it like a rivalry game. I mean, they kept it close with Indiana for the majority of that game. Indiana's got to come in prepared. I know there's, like I mentioned earlier, they're staring at the possibility of losing back-to-back games. It's something that they haven't done since early January. This would be a major, major bounce back win if Indiana can somehow get it done. But I mean, they're going to have to play nearly perfect. I look at the turnovers. I don't think this is being talked enough. Indiana's got a major turnover problem right now. I don't know what they're averaging on the season, but I mean, they are really careless with the ball, and not a lot of times, those turnovers turn into points. Indiana's transition defense is pretty solid for that points, but I mean, you're losing opportunities on the offensive end when you turn the ball over, obviously. So Indiana's got to limit that. I wouldn't expect Xavier Johnson to play at Purdue. So we can just kind of, throw that out the window. But Indiana's got to play nearly perfect if they want to get this road win. They're going to have to pressure Zach Edey, like they did at Assembly Hall. They're just going to have to play, almost the exact same way that they did when Purdue came to town, a few weeks ago. It's going to be a tough one. I don't think people are giving Indiana a lot of hope here, but if Indiana can treat it like a rivalry game, if they can play up to how they should be playing, with intensity and, on the defensive end, and, hopefully some shots fall and make it a game, but it's going to be a tough one. Not a lot of hope for Indiana going into that one.
And they don't have to win that game, and no one's going to expect them to win that game. They're not going to be picked by Vegas to win that game. As a matter of fact, they're not going to be picked by anyone to win that game other than some IU fans. But they have to play. They have to come to play. They can't get beat like the Iowa women got beat last night at Maryland. That was just a total beatdown by a team that is really good. But I'm using that as an example of shows you as, man, when it's not your night and it's somebody else's night, holy hell, things can get bad. So Indiana has to come in with unbelievable determination no matter what, and they have to stay the course. I don't want to use this word quit, but it seemed like that they kind of just relinquished their thoughts that they could win the game last night at some point. I don't. Yeah. Is there a better way of saying that? I mean, am I wrong? Is it just me that saw that? I just felt that they had kind of relinquished too much to where they could win.
It got down to the last 5 minutes when I started to really notice that, especially when Mike Woodson pulled Trace Jackson Davis around 3 minutes left to go in the game, and he inserted the freshman and Anthony Leal. I mean, he just knew. I mean, necessary. That's not a
And
bad
poor
thing.
Anthony Leal, gosh dang, Trace Jackson Davis takes a Nolan Ryan fastball and hurls it across the court, and it flies through Anthony's hands and back out of the game he went.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like I was mentioning, I think Mike Woodson just realized it. Let's get those freshmen some minutes. Let's get Anthony Leal some minutes there. Um, it's just one of those things where it's just like it doesn't hurt Indiana to get a little few extra minutes of rest there. There's no reason for Trace Jackson Davis to continue to finish out the game. Really, no reason for any of the starters. Let's just rest. Let's just cut our losses and let's just move on. But
that's a first. We haven't seen that this year.
No, we haven't done that. No, because like I said, usually this is really the first time that in a long time that I feel like Indiana's gotten punched and they haven't punched back. That punch has never came at all last night. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is the bench points. Throw away the garbage points by CJ Gunn and Anthony Leal towards the end of the game. Malik Renew, who's definitely a part of the rotation, was the only player to score on the bench. On the road,
and that's 2 whopping points.
2 whopping points. That's no way that can happen. I don't know what's happened with Tamar Bates. I don't know where he's gone or whatever, but I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to. He's almost becoming a liability on the floor in a way because he's not providing anything. So, his whole career in Indiana has been inconsistency. It's not even inconsistency anymore. It's just not there anymore. So I know he's going to have to wake up because he was primed to be Indiana's leading scorer off the bench. And without him, Indiana's going to really struggle. You got to have bench scorers. And, last night showed that if you don't have a bench that's scoring, you're not going to win games.
Well, I'm going to give Miller Kopp a little reprieve because I think Tamar Bates and his lack of play and people in that position are affecting him. Miller Kopp, 6 points last night, only 3 shots again, all 3-pointers. He hit 2 of them. Indiana needed more of that. Yep. You can't beat a team that is hitting 10 threes when you're hitting 5 because those points just keep aggregating up. But Miller Kopp is playing. He fouled out because he's had to play. He was playing his ass off on defense, but not having that third option. It's kind of hard to be the third option when you're kind of one of the main defenders at certain areas, which he has been. But you've got to have that other guy to loosen Miller Kopp up, and so this team they're not at all where they need to be right now. And that game, I don't know, that causes some concern to me for them, their ability, how far they can go. I'm like, yeah, they're still got to
figure out some things, right? Like they said.
Well, it's not just that they don't have the weapons to go as far as fans think that they should go. Trace Jackson Davis, Jalen Hood-Schifino, great, but it cannot be those two because I promise you might get through the first and second rounds in the NCAA tournament, but when you start playing the third, especially if you're lucky enough to get to the fourth round, you're playing big time teams that play defense. You're gonna draw a Big 12 team, and let me tell you, all those guys have done all season is have a fist fight every game. And I don't mean that literally. I just mean their games are defensively tough and they are battle tested. If you don't think so, if you pay attention to quad 1 wins, right now the number 1 team in the country is Houston. Their quad 1 record is 4-1. Kansas has more quad 1 losses than Houston has wins, but that's because they also have 16 quad 1 wins to go with those 6 losses. Virtually every game they play is a quad 1 game. That's why I like these Big 12 teams. I just think that they're going to be battle tested. They're going to be tough, but that's why you have to be tough, and you cannot be tough this game and not tough the next game.
Yeah. I agree. And to your point about Indiana not having the weapons, me personally, I think they have the weapons. It's all about utilizing them at the end of the day. like you mentioned, Miller Kopp had 2 threes, or he hit 2 threes, had 6 points or whatever, shot 3 of them, I think. Trace Jackson Davis early on in the game was double teamed, and he immediately found Miller Kopp. My thing is just like, why not continue to do that? Why not to continue to get him looks like that?
You know
Why
what?
go away with that?
There was a
That's a frustrating part on Indiana's offense. It's just like they forgot, they got short-term memory loss. Like, okay, that worked. I threw Miller Kopp the ball. I got him an open look. Let's try to go back to that. Now I would have to go back and watch the game. Maybe Michigan State, kind of, zoned in on Miller Kopp a little bit more after that. But
well, I remember a specific time, TJD near the basket, I think he was at least double teamed, and Miller Kopp was in the corner, and I think his hands were up, flashing. Never even got the look. Shot was missed or blocked or whatever happened, and the other way they go. So, yeah, they're not. This offense is not one that is set up to have. It just seems like it does not have secondary and third dairy.
There's not a lot of ball movement.
It's either this or back to this.
Yep.
It's either this is Trace Jackson Davis, back to Jalen Hood-Schifino. But there's no other movement and looks off of that, which, man, that makes it pretty damn easy for a defense to kind of just settle down.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. There's just not a lot of ball movement. I remember one play where I felt Indiana was moving the ball last night. But other than that, like, you're kind of spot on that. It's not like that situation. If they don't have anything for Trace Jackson Davis, let's get it back to Jalen Hood-Schifino, let him create. And after that, Indiana's just done. So they got to get a little bit more creative on that end. They can't, Mike Woodson likes to say that they want to ride Trace Jackson Davis. You can't ride him every single offensive possession. You got to get Miller Kopp involved. Trey Galloway's got to cut to the basket a little bit harder. Race Thompson's got to free himself up when Trace Jackson Davis is being double teamed, which he did a little bit last night, and he's starting to do. But Indiana's got to be a little bit more creative on the offensive end. Their defense keeps them in the games. It didn't keep them in the game last night, but it's going to come down to scoring points eventually, especially when you get in a tournament play.